Hello! In this video I want to show concrete examples how to implement responsive images in HTML. I have 6 examples and I start with a very simple example at the beginning. In this HTML you can see that I have some styling for the image tag. I'm giving the image a width of 100% and an automatic height. Basically, that's the setting for responsive images. The image will take as much room as there is available. If you look at the body tag, I have a simple headline describing the example, and then a div which is limiting the width to 1200 pixels. Inside the div you can see I have the image tag with the source attribute. The source attribute contains binary data and it's rendering a transparent pixel. But there's also a source set attribute and a sizes attribute. The source set attribute is suggesting 2 images and it's also specifying the width of those images. So there's an image with 600 pixels and another one, a bigger one, with 1200 pixels. The sizes attribute on the image tag is telling the browser how much room there is available. It's matching the outer div, which is also 1200 pixel wide. Let's see how the browser is rendering this HTML. At top you see the headline and below it's the div with 1200 pixels, and inside the image it's a dummy image. And you can see that it is taking the bigger image from the source set. The image set is 1200 pixel wide. So the browser is picking an image that fits into the room that is available. This second example is very similar to the first example. The only change is that the div now is limited to 600 pixels, also on the image tag. The sizes attribute says that there are 600 pixels available. So it's a perfect fit for the smaller image that is 600 pixels wide. Inside the browser we see that it's still taking the larger image with 1200 pixels. And that is because I'm using a screen with high pixel density. The browser detects that and decides to take the larger image because it knows it can render the larger image in a smaller div due to more pixels available on the screen. On other screens with a normal pixel density, the browser would pick the smaller image with 600 pixels. In the third example, I only changed the sizes attribute to 300 pixels, and now it's not matching the outer div, and I did this on purpose because I want to demonstrate what the browser is actually taking. And it is taking the value from the sizes attribute, and it's pretty much ignoring the size of the outer div. So in this example, the image tag thinks that there are only 300 pixels available. Here you can see that the outer div is still 600 pixels wide, but because I changed the sizes attribute on the image tag, it is actually taking now the smaller images, the image with 600 by 400 pixels. Now let's add a JavaScript library. Lazy Sizes is helping you with responsive images. And here's a very simple example. You're loading this library on top in the page head, and in the body you're specifying the images that you want this library to handle. That's why there's a class LazyLoad on the image tag now. And the other difference is that the sizes attribute does not have a concrete value, it just says auto. This is a non-standard HTML value, but it tells LazyLoad to replace this auto value with the room that is actually available. So you can expect in the browser that sizes will say 300 pixels because the outer div is 300 pixels wide. Here's the example in the browser. The div is 300 pixels wide, and it is no surprise that it will take the smaller image with the 600 pixels by 400. Also, if you look at the source code, you can see that the sizes attribute does not have the value auto anymore. It is actually replaced with the actual value that is available, the size that is available for this image. The next example is a little bit more dynamic. For the diff size, I now have a percentage, meaning that if I'm changing the browser window, we're going to have more or less room available. And I'm still using the lazy sizes JavaScript library and tell the image tag to automatically find a perfect size for the image. On the left side on the screen, you see that I reduced the size of my browser window. Also, the image is the smaller image because the surrounding div is pretty small. If I now change the browser window size, you can see that at some point it will swap that image to the bigger size, because at some point this div is so big that it makes sense for the browser to load the image with a higher resolution. Also, if you inspect the document and you look the sizes attribute, you can see that it is constantly getting changed by the JavaScript library, depending on how much room there's actually available for the image. One more detail to this example. It doesn't work the other way around. If you start loading this page with a bigger window size, it will of course load the bigger image. But then if you change the window size to a smaller browser window, it will stick to the image that the browser already loaded and will just scale down this high resolution image. There's actually no point in loading a lower quality image when you already downloaded the high resolution image. That's why the browser decided not to even load the smaller image. The next example is different. It is now using a picture tag and not a simple image tag anymore. Inside the picture tag, you can see I still have the image tag with this transparent pixel for the source. But there's also 3 sources tags, and those sources specify available images with something like a media query. So basically, what you can do with a picture tag set up like that is that you can have images by breakpoints. For example, if you use Bootstrap, you also have breakpoints. You can match those breakpoints and decide what image you want to load per breakpoint. In this example, I have a large image for the first source, and I specify this twice for a normal pixel density, but also for screens with a high pixel density. And I say that there must be a window minimum size of 1200 pixels. The next source tag has a smaller image and requires a window minimum size of 600 pixels. And also the last example, smaller image again, a minimum window size of width of 300 pixels. The order does matter here. So if you're working with a min width, you want to make sure that the largest image is on top and the smallest image is the last element here. Let's look at this example in the browser. So start with a fairly big window size, and it is loading the biggest image. If I make that window smaller, you can see that it's swapping out the image already to a smaller image, and if I go further down, at some point it will pick the smallest image here. And that works in both directions. So with the picture tag, you can implement something like an image per breakpoint.